Guys, Bloody Jacob here to bring you another set of action movie reviews, and this time I'm going to be talking about a series of Dolph Lundgren films, including Masters of the Universe, released in 1987, along with Men of War, 1994, The Peacekeeper from 1997, and finally Direct Contact from 2009.
Jacob here, meeting my icon, Catherine Isabel here. Yeah.
And first off, we are going to be talking about Masters of the Universe, which again came out in 1987. It was directed by Gary Goddard and starred Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. Yes, he does have the power, along with Frank Langella and Meg Foster, who a lot of you genre fans should know from various horror projects over the decades. And then you also have Courtney Cox, yes, Monica Geller herself from Friends, before she moved into their apartment with Rachel. And you even have, I forgot to mention, you even have Billy Barty in there as Gwildor, one of He-Man's allies. And yeah, according to IMDb, it's about a heroic warrior that battles against the evil Lord Skeletor and his armies of darkness for control of Castle Grayskull. And the interesting thing about this He-Man movie, at least according to IMDb, is that it wasn't actually completely based on the popular cartoon. It was actually almost strictly based on just the line of action figures and I guess the mini comics that had come out with them at the time. So that's why you don't actually see certain elements from the cartoon that are most known to the general public within the movie, because this movie, I guess, was actually in some form of pre-production before the cartoon actually really got going. So it's, I don't know, a little more linear, if you want to call it that, but that's why you don't see, his tiger, you don't see Dolph Lundgren reverting to, some skinnier, smaller Prince Adam or something like that. And I'm sure there are other things, but my brother is a bigger He-Man fan than I was, so I'm kind of just more watching this just for a, cheesy action fantasy Dolph Lundgren movie. And before I get into any of these movies further, though, I do gotta say I absolutely love Dolph Lundgren. I think he is one of the, best stars within the genre since he started. He seems to be one of the genuinely best people within the business. For me, he's right there, just behind people like Arnold Schwarzenegger himself, or Jean-Claude Van Damme, if you guys know me. But after that, it's probably honestly Dolph Lundgren, and then guys like Scott Adkins, and I could go on, but that's for a different video. But yeah, Masters of the Universe. I knew what to expect going into this. You can call it bad if you want to, but really got to give it the time it came out, and I don't think they were trying to be anything more than it was, because basically it was a movie born from the selling of toys and to probably sell more toys, right? But look at other movies like this around that time. They weren't really, as these things can be now within that genre. And for me, I see this as sort of a combination of something like a smaller scale Star Wars movie, and then like going in the Barbarian or something, right? And on that level, I do think it succeeded to a good extent. And of course, you have that not time travel aspect so much, but you sort of have like a similar way it works in there with how He-Man and his friends, along with Skeletor and everything, and how they get to Earth. It's a separate world and everything, so you have a little bit of that teleportation thing going on, so a little bit of sci-fi in there too. And that's where you meet Courtney Cox's character, who's just having like what's supposed to be like one of the highest nights of her life, with going to the big dance and such like that, until her well-intentioned boyfriend discovers the device that they're all trying to get their hands on, and that gets them into the thick of it. But she plays Julie Winston, and she's quite good. I mean, they could have, both her and the boyfriend character, I think, could have been really dull, just sort of side characters. Okay, let's just get back to He-Man and the others, and you do feel that way, but yeah, I think just shows Courtney Cox's talent as an actress, that you actually sort of are entertained by her charisma, even in a role in 1987 and stuff like that. And you also have by the way, like John Cypher, Duncan, Man-at-Arms, and you have James Tolkien as Detective Lubick. And Meg Foster, who I mentioned earlier, is Evil Lynn, that is her name. They had at first wanted her to wear eye contacts for the role, but they actually ended up using her natural eyes, because she's always had a really distinct, sort of stare and, look about her. And for a second, I didn't actually realize that was her, because I'm used to seeing her in, more kind of present movies where she's older. I mean, she was in, I think she was in Jeepers Creepers 3 just not too long ago, and she's done a ton of appearances like that in recent movies as well. But yeah, I like this movie. I mean, sure, some of the action isn't the best. Some of the fight scenes are a bit, clunky. They're not the most, well or complexly choreographed or anything like that. But I think they're about on par with, those other types of movies in the genre. Because you get your, laser, gun shootouts, and then you get a little bit of swordplay with He-Man. And I don't have a pic of it ready right now, but you have a decent shot of when Dolph Lundgren gets the power later of the sword, and you have a good shot of him, sort of, putting the sword, against his chest and stuff like that. Kind of the red lighting and the smoke, a little bit badass. So you kind of tapped into it a little bit there. And Dolph Lundgren himself, he's good here. I mean, again, he's not like the cartoon version completely. You don't see him referring to Prince Adam, luckily, or something like that. So he's basically just like this noble, great warrior, who's been a thorn in Skeletor's side for a while. But Dolph Lundgren, he couldn't have picked anyone any better for the He-Man role in the 80s, I think. At least with Arnold Schwarzenegger already playing Conan and stuff like that. But Dolph Lundgren, of course, being a natural blonde, he just has that kind of chiseled, almost like action figure, sort of physique, right? So he worked on that end as well. And yeah, I mean, it's campy as hell. You can pick at it all you want, but I think in the right mood, I think it entertains just fine. So if I had to rate it, I'm probably giving it somewhere within the 80 percentage, B something, I don't know. I could put it to a C if I'm being honest, but again, it just depends what mood you're in, if you're really ready to watch the sort of movie that is or not. But on its merits and what it was really striving for, I don't think it's all that bad. So yeah, then moving on, we're going to be talking about a very different Dolph Lundgren movie in Men of War, which came out in 1994. Oh, and before we talk about Men of War, one more note about He-Man. Skeletor, Frank Langella does a good job, but they really should have done something about those eyes. Anyway, Men of War. According to IMDb, it's about a former special ops soldier who leads a group of mercenaries to an island in the South China Sea. Their mission is to obtain the rights to the unusual treasure that the island beholds. And yes, I actually have the DVD of that right here. And this is actually a Lundgren movie that not a lot of people talk about, but since being a part of a couple action movie groups on Facebook, namely the Action Elite, I had heard about this being sort of overlooked gem of Lundgren's that only really big fans of his would necessarily know about, that actually look into his work. So I was looking forward to watching this. And like IMDb said, they were basically sent over there to get the natives to sign over the rights to, just different types of materials that, are naturally a part of the landscape they're on at the island. But then, of course, Dolph Lundgren, he eventually sees the corruption within the people who contracted him, and then his men get divided over whether they're going to still try and push these people into taking away their land, or if they're going to side with Lundgren and actually try to fight back against these other mercenaries that are sent after him. So yeah, you basically get like a little mini war zone type of thing going on. Besides Dolph Lundgren in this movie, there's also Charlotte Lewis, B.D. Wong, who a lot of you guys should recognize. Catherine Bell. And yeah, I could go on and list the rest of the cast, but those are definitely the most notables there, along with Tony Dennison, Don Harvey. And yes, you even have Tommy Tiny Lister as Blades, or Zeus Lister, excuse me. But yeah, Men of War, I think, was actually pretty good. It was directed by Perry Lang. I could see Men of War probably being within my top 5 Dolph Lundgren movies, maybe. I still think my personal favorite is Showdown in Little Tokyo, and I do gotta watch Red Scorpion soon. But that's, my overall rankings for another time. But yeah, this is definitely one more people should check out, and look for it, because sometimes you'll find copies are like $17 to $20 that luckily I was able to snag a used but very good conditioned version on Amazon for $8 at a time, so you can get lucky. You just gotta look a little bit. But the fighting in this is actually pretty good. I mean, you get that sort of pit fight towards the end of the movie between Dolph Lundgren and the other head mercenary, where there's sort of a brutal exchange, towards the end. And again, a good thing in all these movies, maybe besides the He-Man one, is that Dolph Lundgren isn't necessarily invincible either. He's not like, I don't need to rant about Steven Seagal too much right now, but he's willing to take a licking. He takes a few good hits himself, and in direct contact coming up, he actually gets hurt pretty badly a couple times. So it's, he's willing to, build suspense and sort of, he's gonna usually win to some extent, but Steven Seagal is just one of those guys behind the scenes that just doesn't like to look weak or like he's beatable, whatsoever. But Lundgren knows he's actually playing a character too, and he kind of has to, play with the story a little bit, right? Because that's what they're trying to do. And there's also some good gunplay in this. I like the island environment. They show a couple different weather conditions there. I thought B.D. Wong did a good job. Catherine Bell, who played one of the other mercenaries that aligns with Dolph Lundgren's character, Nick Gunner, by the way. She is actually pretty good as well. It's kind of nice to see another, action movie of that era actually have like a strong, almost equally strong, female character, sort of fighting alongside and being essential to, hopefully their victory as well. And Charlotte Lewis playing this native, of course, Dolph Lundgren develops feelings for, you gotta have that, she wasn't too bad either for the most part. So yeah, I mean, it's, it had a decent budget, I think, for the kind of movie it was. It was like 8.6 million, I think, which isn't too bad, especially for the time. And they did well with it. I mean, the environment, again, always looked good. It doesn't, I mean, there's like a little bit of a build-up, so when it actually gets to its, big, explosive finale, right? Some people might get a little bored, but I kind of like the time they took to develop the characters' alliances and, kind of their feelings with what was actually the situation there. So yeah, actually, I liked Men of War a good bit. And I'm giving that, probably within like 85-87%, somewhere in there. I'd have to think about it more against my other favorites, but it's definitely one that more people should check out. And next up, we're going to be talking about Direct Contact, which came out in 2009, and obviously, again, stars Dolph Lundgren, along with Gina May and Michael Pierre. And according to IMDb, it's about an American prisoner in a Russian jail who's given a chance at freedom if he can rescue a kidnapped American woman. And now this this movie is an interesting one to talk about too. Well, first, I do actually have it on DVD, sort of this big Dolph Lundgren set, which you can find for pretty ridiculously cheap online. Although if you're a big, collector like I am, you're eventually going to want some of your favorite ones in a separate case, which we'll have to tackle later. I mean, come on, you got Command Performance, Bridge of Dragons, Peacekeeper, which we'll talk about next. Obviously, Direct Contact, Direct Action, Blackjack, and Sweepers. So, pretty good deal there. For 7 films for like $5-8. But yeah, Direct Contact. There's a bit of a there's some issues with this one, a little bit of confusion, because you have basically like a stock image of Dolph Lundgren on the cover there for the poster, because that's basically an image of him from The Russian Specialist, which is one of Dolph Lundgren's own movies. And it's also noticeable because Dolph Lundgren never actually dresses like that in this movie. So it's a little funny. You would have thought they could just use some kind of shot of him for the cover of the movie at least, but... And then this isn't really so much Dolph Lundgren's fault. It's more so on the director and whoever the editor was, I'm not sure. But they do use some stock footage, from previous movies they had worked on. For some reason, Out for a Kill, Steven Seagal is one of them they took from. There's a whole list, I think I read somewhere, but there's quite a few movies actually. I think Derailed with Van Damme, I could be wrong about that. But yeah, so there's certain shots you can see, and again, this is big part due to the editing. You can kind of see sort of cuts where you can tell, oh, someone hasn't dressed exactly the same for the shot, or you can tell like the lighting isn't exactly carried over, So you can kind of tell, and I'm sure it'd be more apparent on a rewatch, but I sort of knew that going in too. So really, it's not that big of a issue necessarily. There's like one shot where a knife, I think it's a knife or something, that goes through a guy's face, and it's kind of like a weird jump cut to showing it in the guy's face, so I feel like that was from something else too. Again, you have to look up to find exactly, or see all the movies that are listed. I think that's on IMDb somewhere, but I still ended up liking this movie for some reason. Gina May as the girl he's trying to keep safe, she is a bit on the irritating side, and then there's like this forced romantic interest between the two that I feel like kind of came out of nowhere. Because before they kind of have like the dynamic, like she's like his annoying kid sister or something, and then all of a sudden she jumps his bones. So it's a bit odd. But do you think Michael Pierre made for a good bad guy? He was convincing as that possible CIA guy who, what's he actually connected to? And I think there is also some stock footage from Undisputed 2, actually, because there is some scenes at the prison at the start of the movie. Again, I don't need to keep going into that, but Dolph Lundgren actually do like his dynamic with Michael Pierre there, and they were kind of changing issues with each other, and just how irritated and pissed off Michael Pierre gets, when Dolph Lundgren goes off and does whatever he ends up deciding is right. And there's some fairly violent shootouts. There are some violent, bad guy deaths in this. I don't want to spoil it for you, but one might involve, a grenade thing, and, unpin it, kicks him out the window, that sort of thing, which is pretty awesome. You see his body, like, burst into blood and, a couple body parts, so it's not too bad. And again, Dolph Lundgren, he isn't invincible in this. He is shot a couple times. He is, hit. He is, like, picked up and slammed against the wall as well. And he's captured at one point as well, to kind of set up, certain dynamics with the other, enemies in the movie and such. But it was, I gotta admit, and there's a good bit with him and Michael Pierre in this park where they meet, and I'm not gonna do the line justice, but basically, fuck you. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. I probably did not do that justice, and considering my dog and my fiance are in the same room right now, it's kind of hard to dance around things when I don't really want to fully go into it with that right now. But I recognize it's not the greatest thing in the world. It's definitely not. It's probably the least well-made movie in this video, just because of all the use of stock footage and thus the editing issues that come with that. But I feel like it was a good time, and I was constantly engaged. I feel like it has a fine pacing to it, and I think it's I was just looking for a straight up, decent action-focused Dolph Lundgren film, and I don't think this is the worst of them. And I said how I took the image from Russian Specialist on the poster, and they did, which is a more well-made movie thanks to Dolph Lundgren's effort with that. But the terrain's kind of similar, the environment and such, and I kind of like the setting with that. So if I had to rate Direct Contact, I'm still fairly positive about it. I'm giving like a B-, maybe like a 79 at lowest, depending. But I don't think it's a bad movie necessarily. And if you're a big Dolph Lundgren fan like I am, I think it's still pretty worth it. And lastly, we're going to be talking about The Peacekeeper, which came out in 1997, and also on that same DVD that I showed you earlier, but it's also free on Amazon Prime. And you can also watch Masters of the Universe. I think it's on Tubi. It was on Prime at one point. I'm not sure if it is now, but anywho. The Peacekeeper. I was debating between watching this and Stormcatcher, but I will be watching Stormcatcher anyway, probably for the next week or two. But going on a big trip, so I had to fit in one more Dolph Lundgren movie before I left. And this one's about a terrorist group that steals the US president's personal communications computer for launching the US arsenal in case of war. And it's only a heroic major that has the key to prevent a presidential assassination or a nuclear holocaust. And alongside Dolph Lundgren, you have Michael Sarrazin, and you have Montel Williams in this movie, and Roy Scheider, who is of course known for Jaws. And another notable is you actually have Christopher Heyerdahl in this movie as one of the terrorist members. Christopher Heyerdahl, of course, he's been in a lot of genre pieces, both TV and film wise. He is actually in Silent Trigger with Dolph Lundgren as well. They have a really good fight in that, which I think is better than what's in here, but I still did like Peacekeeper overall. And also Christopher Heyerdahl has played a big role in the sci-fi series Van Helsing, which has been a staple on my channel since it started a few years ago. Of course, he's Sam on that show. He always plays a really eccentric, creepy, yet really imposing character very well. And he has a funny look in this movie too. I mean, he has like the black goatee and then like the black hair tied back and stuff, so it's a little hilarious. Yeah, he's a guy who can actually measure up to Dolph Lundgren's size, at least to a good extent. So their fight scenes are at least always promising. And then you actually have kind of a cute dynamic when Dolph Lundgren talks to either his wife on the phone or his kid. So you kind of got a little bit more of a relatable layer to it, I guess. And basically Dolph Lundgren, he takes it upon himself to deliver, rice to country on his own that's in trouble, and that was more of a political decision and not his. So he's basically forced into following the president along with this briefcase and everything. And then Montel Williams, he plays a guy who is similarly kind of demoted or brushed under the rug and put in the position that he's in, which is where they meet up and try to basically die hard this facility in the movie. Montel Williams was likable and a little more convincing than I thought he would be. For some reason, part of me forgot he had a movie career at one point. Roy Scheider as the president, some people said, oh, he probably sleepwalked his way through this role, maybe. But he was still convincing. I was surprised. He's one of the better actors to play a president in these sorts of movies that I've seen. I liked him. And then with the main bad guy in this, who I kind of thought had a weird kind of James Bond bad guy sort of look to him. I actually liked the dynamic that revealed between him and the president, sort of, his goals, his motives. Some people said it reminded them of like Tommy Lee Jones's character in Under Siege, but I actually think this one is actually more well fleshed out, a little bit more well explained. And there is a bit of a lull with it. There's kind of like this part, like 55 hour and 5 minutes in, where they kind of take a big stretch to go into that. And for the action junkies, I'll probably make it dip a little bit for them. Maybe it did. But there's also a good amount of suspense with this possible, missile launch and everything. And Dolph Lundgren's character, Montel Williams, trying to get through the equipment to that, and fighting guys like Christopher Heyerdahl and a couple others along the way. I liked it. I mean, I'd still say Men of War is my favorite on the side of this video, and maybe Masters of the Universe in a way. I did kind of like Direct Contact too, but Peacekeeper is definitely fairly well made. It felt like a big theatrical movie, or it could have been anyway. The plot is a bit generic, but I think it works. Dolph Lundgren is good here. You know, he shows the kind of desperation of the situation and the family thing well. There's also this creepy scene where one of the villains is using this technology that's able to mimic, you know, voices. So the guy ends up talking to Dolph Lundgren's wife and kid at one point, and he sort of tries to talk to his wife as Dolph Lundgren about, you know, shimmy sham and stuff like that. So it's a bit unsettling, but something may happen with that guy later. And that kind of comes up later in sort of a funny way when he does talk to his wife himself again. So I thought this was a good one. It sort of reminds me of like, it's not that similar necessarily, but sort of reminds me of like Van Damme's Sudden Death, or one of those like more mainstream, streamlined movies that he did. I could see this being one of those. Although this one apparently isn't brought up that much, and yeah, I think it's one of the better Dolph Lundgren movies available for streaming. So I'd check it out if you haven't yet. So I'm giving Peacekeeper, I'd say like an 83% roughly, give or take. So yeah, it's almost half an hour in, so I'm gonna shut this down here. Gotta get up early tomorrow. Not that anyone who actually cared would be watching this video that far into it, but I am going to Days of the Dead in Chicago, so you will be seeing a video from that eventually, probably as well as a bunch of photos coming up on my Facebook page for all the horror fans out there, but mostly me, myself, and I. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give me your thoughts on each of these. How do you rank them? Which Lundgren movie should I watch next? I have seen Dark Angel. So yeah, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.